I am so passionate about bringing this important episode to you. It's urgent, especially if you are a creator, innovator, or entrepreneur. If you care about your intellectual property, your patents, your freedom to operate, and the future of your business, you need to understand what's happening with Apple in China, because this story is not just about Apple, it's about you. This is Strategic Basics, where we turn breaking news into business breakthroughs for creative entrepreneurs. And I'm Aurora Winter, founder of Same Page Publishing, and this episode is super important. Let's get into it. Apple, the world's most valuable brand, now finds itself cornered by the very empire it helped build. And that should terrify anyone who creates intellectual property, builds a brand or a business, or dares to think long term. Because this is not just a supply chain story, it's a power chain story. A chilling new book, Apple in China, by Patrick McGee, just hit the New York Times nonfiction bestseller list. And for good reason. It reads like a geopolitical thriller, a cautionary branding case study, and a masterclass in strategic miscalculation. Apple thought it was making a smart trade. It wasn't. It was handing over leverage. Here's the immediate relevance of this. Let's get something straight out the gate here. Trade is the exchange of value. One party gives something, the other gives back. In theory, it should be win-win. Win-win or no deal. But what happens when you think you're getting a fair deal and it turns out you just sold your soul at a discount? As an author, serial entrepreneur, founder, and content creator, I'm angry about this. I think this is super important, and that's why I'm so excited to bring this to you, because I think we all need to pay attention. I've watched clients have their ideas stolen, their brands knocked off, and their products copied and cheapened, not by accident, by design. Piracy, theft, really. For example, Lois Sonstegard, a client of mine, she now has an amazing book called Start With Collaboration. But before she did that, she built a beauty brand from the ground up. She did product research, packaging, positioning, marketing. All of it was brilliant, and it was working beautifully until another manufacturer ripped it off. Same branding, same packaging, but not the same quality. The result was a double hit, a cheap competitor with none of her R&D costs, and worse, customers thought her brand had lost quality. Same thing happened to me. Another story, perhaps you can relate. I bought an Arc'teryx jacket on Amazon. It looked legit. Logo, color, copy, all perfect. But the first time it rained, I was soaked. And this was a rain jacket. The jacket wasn't real. It was a knockoff. It was a fake. And yes, I've even had my own books pirated and resold, in fact, on the Apple platform. They did take it down, but in the meantime, my revenue was gone, my brand was diluted, and trust was potentially broken with my readers. So when I say what's happening to Apple matters to you, I mean it. This may be a big story, but it happens as in the microcosm, so in the macrocosm. So was it a trade or was it a trap? Here was Apple's billion-dollar gamble. According to the author, Patrick McGee, Apple invested more than $275 billion over 5 years into China. Why? Well, he goes into that in depth in his excellent book, but as an overview, it made sense at first glance, at least. Efficient production, lower costs, and a skilled labor force. A labor force that, in fact, Apple invested heavily in training. But today, it seems that China has become the one country that can meet Apple's quality standards at scale. So Apple flew their engineers across the Pacific. They set up factories. Chinese workers were trained in the high-tech expertise of Apple employees, and a sleek billion-dollar machine roared to life in China. But here is the kicker. The more that Apple invested in China, the more dependent it became. And dependency is the enemy of control. Patrick McGee put it brilliantly. Apple didn't just outsource manufacturing, it outsourced power. And now Beijing has that power, and it's using it. So let's go into the takeaways for creative entrepreneurs. Even if you're not on the Apple payroll, I think lesson number one that I want to bring to you is to notice, what game are you playing? Patrick McGee uses a sharp metaphor to explain the strategic mismatch between the US and China. America plays chess, China plays Go. In chess, you win with a clear checkmate. You take the king. Game over. But Go is more sinister. You encircle. You gain ground slowly. You surround the enemy before they even realize they're trapped. Does that sound familiar? Now, the metaphor doesn't fit perfectly, but you get the idea. They were playing different games. Apple was playing for efficiency, scale, and quarterly profits. China was playing for long-term dominance over decades, maybe even hundreds of years. This is not just about Apple. It is a mirror for every business owner to be alert to. So what are you optimizing for? For speed or strategy? For revenue or resilience? For visibility or for control? Because if you're not careful, you might build a beautiful business that becomes your prison. Lesson number 2, control or profit. Here's the uncomfortable truth that author Patrick McGee drives home. Chinese companies are not driven by profit. They're driven by control. Obviously, they're in the communist country. They don't answer to shareholders. They answer to the state. And the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party, can and does exert force. Not just influence, force. With zero regard for intellectual property, brand value, or free market ethics, or so it appeared to me. Let me know what you think in the comments. If you create something of value, they'll study it, learn from it, copy it. Then they'll undercut you, sell it at a fraction of the price, and flood the market. There goes your investment in your R&D, IP, and brand. And if you complain, well, good luck with that. Shifting to a more local story, a self-published author, David Goggins, has a book called Can't Hurt Me, a best-selling book. But it's been pirated and resold thousands of times. His IP was stolen, his brand was diluted with poor quality books available on Amazon. And when he complained to Amazon, they were so unresponsive to his complaints about all the money he'd lost and the poor quality of the books that were pirated that he eventually took them to court. At one point, according to David Goggins' suit, he was compelled to knowingly sign 125 pirated copies of his book, Can't Hurt Me, at an event. One of his clients had bought them on Amazon, and he didn't want to disappoint his fans. So there you go. Let me know what you think about these issues of copyright infringements in the comments. Have you experienced copyright infringement? Have you bought a knockoff brand, like my case with the Arc'teryx jacket? Or have you bought a copy of a book that you definitely thought was maybe pirated or bootlegged, perhaps like David Goggins' book? How have you experienced with these things? Or have you suffered like my client, Lois Sonstegard, who had her whole product line completely ripped off by a competitor? And that was a complete disaster. The legal costs were, out of this world to try to confront that. All right. Get passionate about this. Lesson number 3 for all creators, experts, and entrepreneurs is about blind spots and dependency. So back to you. Strategy is not only about what you do, it's about what you notice. Apple, focused on sleek execution, missed the bigger game. They poured billions into China, not realizing they were laying the bricks of their own trap. Because once the infrastructure was in place, moving was nearly impossible. Apple can't just pull up the stakes. The factories are massive, and they're hyper-optimized ecosystems. Plus, the staff or the workers are trained. So what does China do? Change the terms, enforce new rules, or renegotiate. And on their terms, once they've got Apple or another company over the barrel with copycat products already lined up. And thank you very much for the investment in the infrastructure and for training all the people. Anyway, that's what I think, and that seems to be what Patrick McGee is saying in his book. I'd love to know what you think and what your experience is. But it does seem to be that China's game is the same thing over and over again. Extract, copy, replace. What does this mean for you? For thought leaders, founders, creators, and entrepreneurs? You might be thinking, this is Apple. I'm not running a $1 trillion empire. I don't have a huge brand like that. And that's what I thought at first glance when I read this story. But here's the parallel. When we go deeper, when you're launching a new offer, designing a new brand, or publishing a book, you must be aware of the power dynamics at play. In other words, who's got the power? And 1 is a very dangerous number. 1 platform, 1 client, 1 supplier. one key salesperson, one manufacturer. Do you have any of these single points of failure in your business? Because if that one point fails or turns against you, everything you've built can be held hostage. So ask yourself, where are you overexposed? Where are you underprotected? Where are you trading off short-term convenience but risking long-term control? My mother always said, build in a little redundancy. So build in a little redundancy, because one is a very dangerous number. Chain is only as strong as the weakest link. So bottom line, what's your $1 million message? You can't control every external force, but you can control your message and your vision. Patents, copyrights, intellectual property, that's your moat, that's your leverage, and that is the long game. That's why I'm appearing on video on Strategic Basics, because you can see my face, you can see it's me, it's not AI or some knockoff. But in my view, books are the highest leverage strategy for creating a valuable brand. I've written 10 books and they've helped me launch multiple businesses. Of course, I am the founder of Same Page Publishing, so I am completely biased. I've loved books since I was 9. I think books are the highest leverage way to learn. So read, but they're also the highest way to set your flag and become a leader, acknowledged leader in your area of expertise. So writing a book is not just about branding, it's a strategic play. It positions you as the go-to expert, and it protects your ideas by codifying them in a permanent public form that you can copyright and own for generations. A book is part of your legacy. In a world where the rules keep changing, the people who rise to the top are the ones who see the big picture, the ones who play the long game. They lead with vision, they speak with clarity, and they publish books that define their space. At Same Page Publishing, we help successful entrepreneurs create award-winning books using the spoken author method. No interns, no handoffs, no fluff, just your voice, captured in a book and echoed across 1,000 pieces of media. If that's what you're looking for, apply for a business breakthrough call at bookcall.biz, or you can find out more at samepagepublishing.com. This is Strategic Basics, where we turn breaking news into business breakthroughs for you, the founder, leader, or creative entrepreneur. And I'm Aurora Winter, founder of Same Page Publishing and the author of 10 books, including Turn Words into Wealth. I'd love to know what topics you'd like us to cover in upcoming Strategic Basics videos. Please let me know in the comments. And please do like and subscribe. It means the world to me, and it helps me with the algorithm. Some of our videos have almost no views, while most have thousands of views, and that's because sometimes the algorithm throttles the views and throttles showing the video because the topic is maybe a little bit too hot for YouTube. So please do comment, like, and subscribe. It makes the world of difference and really empowers me to bring you great content that I think will be super valuable to you in this topic of breaking news turned into business breakthroughs. And don't forget to grab your free copy of my award-winning book, Turn Words into Wealth. You can get the ebook absolutely for free at turnwordsintowealth.com, or you can get the print copy wherever books are sold. In Turn Words into Wealth, you will learn how to build your business, brand, and book and create multiple streams of income and impact. And it's my gift to you, absolutely for free.